Each week, we dive into Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series. And while you can find our overall thoughts on the season in our first episode, throughout book one, we will be discussing in further detail how each episode compares to this live action companion. So, Alex, let's start with you.
All right, well, the big comparison point for this one in the live action is that this episode does not exist in the live action version,
Yeah,
essentially.
the most important episode,
Yeah,
arguably,
because they
not in there.
like we kind of
Nope.
talked about at length in our previous episode, they
Mm-hmm.
showed the genocide of the air nomads
Mm-hmm.
at the Southern Air Temple, as opposed to in this where they decided to not show it. And we just spent a while talking about why we think that it was much more powerful for them to not show in the animated one and instead let the audience fill in those gaps there and let them feel the
Mm-hmm.
weight of like Aang finding that out and discovering that on his own, as opposed to, well, the audience has already seen it, so like, that's the way
Yeah,
that
and
we'll
it's even more
tackle
important
that
because
there.
Aang is kind of supposed to be us in a way. Like we're supposed to
Yeah.
relate to Aang. We're supposed to be taken through this
Hmm.
story through Aang's eyes. Like we learn as Aang learns,
Yeah.
kind of. And so Aang doesn't see the genocide. So we don't see
Yeah.
the genocide, which makes sense. Like Aang is also left to the imagination of what could have possibly happened to his own people. And
Yeah.
like that's a real thing that happens in life. Like a lot of people have to, if you don't see it or don't know exactly how it happened,
It's not.
having it left
It's
up to
a
your imagination is almost worse.
Yeah, and it's almost worse, and also it makes it easier for him to dismiss before he sees the like results of it, right? Before he sees the
Mm-hmm.
real
The
evidence, because
proof.
like he didn't see it,
Yeah.
it's not real. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not something that he like got to experience, obviously. We do like get them going to the Southern Air Temple at the end of the first episode in the live action show, but it's a much more quick them just like going around because we have to pick up Momo, who I do. I know you don't like the way
Mm-hmm.
he looks in the live action. I love him. I think he's so cute still.
Freaky. But also, like,
So
I'm scared of monkeys, so I think that's why.
yeah, that's fair.
Ever since I
He's
saw Nope, no monkeys.
Oh, that's very fair. I'm understandable.
I'm scared.
Um, but so like they kind of just like really breeze through the Southern Air Temple portion in the live action show. They also don't really
Yeah.
focus on the Avatar lore stuff in it as much, which
Yeah.
is like a big portion of the reason they're like narratively the reason that they're at the Southern Air Temple is because we need that information for the audience as to like how the
Mm-hmm.
Avatar cycle works and like what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so we don't really get that as much in the live action show, which again is more of like they already in other places have decided to over explain the things to the audience, as opposed to,
Mm-hmm.
again, like we were saying earlier, like feeling like it's a discovery with the characters as far as like how all of this stuff goes. um which like they just again lose so much in character growth, in like in natural narrative growth, in
Mm-hmm.
trusting the audience, in
That they'll
having
get what each character wants and needs and their relationship. And like
yeah.
that scene with Katara and Aang, how Katara brings Aang down. And that
Hmm.
I would argue like that's the second time she does that because when he's underwater, we hear Katara shouting like Aang, Aang,
Yeah,
and then
and
he
that's
wakens
Tracy
into the
like
Avatar
yeah.
state. Um, so like shows that their relationship is so important and why it's important that it is Katara with Aang because
Hmm.
Katara helps him manage this power that is out
Yeah,
of
and it
control right
just
now. We
it
don't
like
see that.
for if for some it doesn't like the emotional weight of that moment does not really hit in the live action show. Like it
Mm-hmm.
they basically do it like beat for beat essentially the same
Yeah.
when they do actually have him freaking out in the Avatar state and wrecking everything, and like Katara bringing him down. Like that does literally happen in the live action show, but
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't feel the same at all really, and is
Like it's not worked for.
yeah, and you also lose the impact of what you were just talking about with like the one skeleton that we see in the animated show is Monk
Mhm.
Gyatso, and like that feels significantly less impactful in the live action show because in the first 30 minutes of the episode we watched
We
like
saw them all
hundreds of people
die.
be burned to death. Like
Yeah.
like
Like it's
I
important because it's like, oh, that's kind of one of
it
the
it's
only
shocking.
deaths we
Like
see, is it?
yeah,
I'm just
like I don't think anyone else really dies
like Iroh's son a little bit, but that's
in
kind of just talked
Avatar.
about. We never see that
Yeah, I know Korra kills not Korra herself, but like the show does show
in
a
the
couple.
show. Oh, and
Oh,
Jet dies.
yes. Rip.
Forgot about that.
Big
R.I.P.
rip.
And well, I mean, and a big theme for the end is that they're like, and you're gonna have to kill people as the
Hmm.
Avatar. Like that is a big plot point that comes up, and he's
Yeah.
very
And
much
he's
like,
very
no, I'm gonna do this my way. I'm not gonna kill people.
yeah.
And that, well, now
Um
we're talking about the finale, but we'll
it's
get
fine.
there.
Yeah. But yeah, it takes the shock of that away in the live action because it's like, oh well, I saw a bunch of corpses and people already like having to deal
That
with
doesn't
this
hit as much. Yeah.
at the yeah, so like you lose the impact of, like you were saying, Aang is supposed to be our point of view character, or the character
Hmm.
that we're with, and we lose his shock. And even if in the live action version he is dealing with that shock, it's less shocking for the audience because we've been exposed to all of the other like trauma and
Yeah.
like horrible things
Like
that we saw in the opening of the episode.
it reminds me of in like, well, I hate to use this comparison, but like Schindler's List, like the red, the use of
Hmm.
red in that one bit for what
Yeah,
was it, the girl's shoes or the girl's dress?
I'm pretty sure it's shoes, I think.
Shoes, I think. But
Yeah.
it makes it so much more impactful that that's the only color. It's the
Hmm.
only time you see that,
Yeah,
that
it hits.
it hits. It makes it hit
It
so
makes it
much more.
special.
If you save your best little bits and you don't give it all away at the start, it's gonna
Mhm.
make it better. If you don't give everything all
Yeah,
away.
it's
Again, this show is a slut.
it just yeah, it's something. But I also this is not entirely related to this episode or like the comparisons in these episodes. I don't think there's a really like solid comparison point in the animated series for when this moment happens, but in the live action show, what reminded me about it a few minutes ago whenever we were talking
Yeah.
and how like honor is the biggest thing for the Fire Nation and all of that. Their hair and their top knots are like super important to the Fire Nation. Like it's like one of
Yes.
the bit like that is, if you like cut their hair or do anything with that, like that's like the number
Like
one
I know
thing
that's
that
even like in real life, like that's a Native American thing. If you cut your hair, like
yeah,
that's
it's like a
shameful. That's
yeah. And they
mhm.
literally in I don't remember which episode it is, but it's when Iroh is being transported as like a prisoner
Mhm.
and stuff. One of the archers like shoots an arrow from like, and they get his top knot. Like they take his
Mhm.
top knot off, and then the show just like that's
Moves on from
that.
that.
Yeah, it doesn't do like it doesn't linger on. It makes no like he doesn't comment on it. Zuko doesn't comment on it. There's no
You're
anything.
right.
There's no, yeah, it's like almost played as a like it's not a gag exactly because it's just meant to show like the accuracy of the archers that are hanging out in the trees, and like
Yeah, but
that they're
also
a
like
threat. But
his
that's a
top not
very
being
big
removed
deal.
is a removal of his honor. And that is like a
Yeah.
Japanese tradition, I know. Like the removal of
Hmm.
your hair means you've been shamed. They talk about this if anybody's seen the show Blue Eyed Samurai. Highly
Hmm.
suggest if you like Avatar, you will like this show. But they address it in there. Somebody's top knots gets cut off and
Yeah.
he's dishonored. He's shamed.
It's just
He
and they
lost.
don't get into
And
it.
doesn't Iroh also cut off his top knot in the animated show with Zuko when they both cut it off and put it in the river? Or is it just
Sounds right,
Zuko?
but I'm not sure. Yeah, that does
Yeah.
happen.
Okay.
So again, it's like a very important thing in the animated series that
Mhm.
just the live action show doesn't seem to care
Like,
about or have any interest in,
yeah.
which is
Like
like
that was important. It's kind of like I would say for you, I don't know much about Batman, but I know in one movie they just had him shooting guns.
yeah, that does happen.
Like,
And that
isn't that important? Isn't he
yeah,
all
it's
about
a
not
pretty
using guns?
yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I mean, I get you could do that, sure. Go for it.
Yeah.
I guess,
It's
man.
one of those things.
Yeah, it's just lots of odd decisions that I'm not really it just feels like they really like they lost the plot a little bit,
Yeah, they
which
just
is not
wanted to use the cool parts and they just wanted to show the fun bits without and
which
this
is
isn't
ironic because they lose a lot of the fun in
they
there too. Like
do.
they try to make it super like serious and like
Serious.
gritty and stuff. Because like even in this episode in the animated series, the like it's a very serious episode. Like the airball bit is hilarious. The
Mhm.
like Sokka, constantly searching for food is hilarious. Like it's
Mhm.
always got the comedy mixed in there with the very very serious drama, the very
And the
real
bits even
drama.
with Iroh. And that's I think that shows a lot. This series is all about balance and yin and yang. And
Hmm.
now is like that's I think narratively too, it does so much yin and yang between even comparing Zuko to the gang and their relationships and
Yeah.
the relationships with parents between Katara and their parents and Zuko and his parents. and between Zuko and Iroh's relationship versus like maybe Aang and Gyatso's relationship. And we see all of that with the way they all talk to each other, with the fights. There's so much, and between the comedy bits too.
Yeah, it's just like
it is light and dark.
They nail that contrast and that that juxtaposition so well. So,
hey, Aspect listener, enjoying the show?
then be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out more episodes and clips on our playlist here.
Thanks so much for watching, and
Blamio Hot Man.